Yeah, hi there everybody at my YouTube channel, and I am Michael Buckoff, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the 7-step system to pass a TOEFL IBT. And today I have, it's kind of an interesting situation here. This is actually one of my English composition students here at California State University, San Bernardino, and he's also a student who has taken the TOEFL test. Now he's kind of in the middle of his TOEFL journey. He might not be finished exactly yet, but so far, I'm looking at his subtotals here. His subtotal score is 14 points on reading, 15 points listening, 21 points on speaking, and 17 points on writing. So his total score is 67. And at California State University, I think a score is at 60-61 is good for undergraduate admissions, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's met this standard requirement for undergraduate students here at California State University. I think the minimum requirement is 61. Now, during the interview, as I talk with Tony here, Tony is going to talk a little bit about his own background. He's going to talk about what type of English practice he did before he took the TOEFL exam. If he might have some tips for other students who might be getting ready to take the TOEFL test maybe this week or next month. He's also going to talk a little bit about during the TOEFL exam. He'll talk about his experience, what he found easy, what was difficult, maybe things he might do differently next time. He'll talk a little bit about some of those things, and then maybe near the end of the video, we will talk about some of Tony's future goals. So first of all, thank you, Tony, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Okay. When I have prepared for my TOEFL test, I only got a half a year to prepare because after that I need to get away from my home country and go to the other country to study. Okay, so let me just make a quick point.
So how would you describe, Tony, how would you describe your English before the 6-month preparation period before taking the TOEFL? Would you consider yourself beginner, intermediate, or advanced in your English before the 6-month preparation period?
I will say I'm a beginner. I have no idea about the text and the whole process.
Okay, wow. Okay, so now let's talk about this 6-month period. So what are some things that you did during the 6-month period in order to prepare for the TOEFL exam?
Well, at first I just taking some class, some pretty basic class in my college, and after that I get to know about the writing part. Mostly was the writing part and the speaking part, because I'm not the native speaker, and I try hard to become more outspoken and try to pronounce and fix my pronunciation.
So when you were working on these areas in your college, you were working on the speaking and the writing, what types of practice exercises did you do? What kind of feedback did you get during this period?
During this period, when I take in class, we have tests or exam in each month, and but those kind of exam is not the same as TOEFL. So it's kind of the school given an exam, and we take the exam and see the feedback.
And what kind of so it wasn't the actual TOEFL exam, but it was speaking and writing practice tests?
Yes.
And how did you do the speaking practice? Was this done by interview, talking to a teacher? Did you submit it by email or by audio, or how did you do this?
We had a class and we have a teacher to teach us, and we have some speaking text. I need to talk to the teacher face to face.
Okay.
And she or he graded.
And they would kind of evaluate your...
Yeah.
Did they do the same thing with the writing? Was it kind of like that too?
Writing is just we have the topic, and then during a time period, and we write a write article, and then submit to the teacher.
Okay, so here's a tip to my YouTube audience. What we can get out of this is, first of all, Tony is demonstrating that when you're getting ready to take the TOEFL exam, it's usually not something that you do for just 1 or 2 weeks. In his case, he spent roughly 6 months to get ready for this exam. So it takes some preparation, right? Now, one other question, Tony, we'll move into the TOEFL exam itself. What kinds of things did you do outside of class? Did you read newspapers? Did you listen to music? Did you watch TV in English? Did you have opportunities to speak English with native speakers? What did you do in addition to being in class? Was there anything else you did outside of class that you felt maybe helped you get ready for the TOEFL exam?
When the test was right on the way, and I only have a month and a half left.
Okay.
And I searched the internet and tried to get some online courses to take, like TPO or something else, and keep practicing.
And he's using TPO as TOEFL Practice Online, he's referring to.
Yes, and to get familiar with the TOEFL test itself and try to do some practice. But one thing I think, the only thing I think confused me is I only got the score, but I can't get the evaluation or the comments from the online text. And
You mean with the speaking and the writing tasks?
Yeah, and the reading and listening too. I only got the score when I doing the online text. So it's kind of get familiar and make me maybe get rid of anxiety during the text.
Okay, so the second thing that he's talking about here is maybe 1.5 months before he took the TOEFL test, he started getting familiar with the TOEFL question types. So he wanted to get familiar with the structure and the format of the TOEFL exam, am I right?
Yes.
And he was using TOEFL Practice Online as a medium to do that. Okay. Now, but you said during TPO, does TPO score the writing? Does it, let's go to the reading and the listening. Can you do a reading practice test at TPO and you can see your range from 0 to 30 points? Does it do that?
Yeah.
More or less?
Yeah.
But I'm guessing with the writing and the speaking, there's no feedback at TPO for speaking and writing tasks.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of estimate yourself on what your score is.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what Tony did before the TOEFL exam. Let's talk about the actual exam day. So do you remember when you took the TOEFL exam approximately?
I think it's on Christmas last year, or maybe a year after.
Okay, or the year before.
Yeah.
You mean Christmas 2016 or Christmas 2017?
Christmas 2016.
Okay, so he took the TOEFL exam about a year ago. All right. So let's talk about the 4 sections of the exam. So we have reading, we have listening, we have speaking, and we have writing. So your first section was reading. Your subtotal score here was 14 points out of 30. So what was difficult or easy about this section of the test, and what advice would you have for other students who are taking the TOEFL exam?
When I'm taking the exam, I saw a lot of people, and especially when doing some speaking or listening part, and it's kind of...
Yeah, keep going.
Because it's lots of people, and then they will keep talking, because they are all taking the exam, so there will be a lot of noise.
Okay.
So you need to be really focused on what you're saying and what you're listening.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, I think TOEFL exam have a lot of listening, no matter, not only in the listening part, they have listening in the writing and speaking.
So same thing with the reading too, yeah.
Yeah.
The reading and the listening are two different sections, but you also get reading and listening passages during the speaking and the writing portions of the exam. Now, one thing that he said, I think there's an important tip here for you guys watching at YouTube. The TOEFL testing center is typically noisy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background. There's other people when they're completing speaking tasks. There's just noise. There's people with headphones on. They're listening to listening passages. So he's saying that it's important to be focused and to practice concentrating on the test and not being distracted. Now, Tony, here's what some students do. Sometimes I have students who submit speaking practice by email, and guess what? There's a radio in the background. There's a TV in the background that's on, yeah. Or they do the speaking practice at Starbucks, and there's a lot of people in the background speaking. So when a person does that, they're trying to learn how to concentrate even with the background noise or distraction. So that's something that you guys can try. So if you're practicing reading, or you're doing listening, or you're doing speaking or writing practice, you might turn on a radio or have some noise in the background as you do that, so you can try to concentrate on the TOEFL materials that you have, even though you have these distractions. Okay, so let's go back for the reading one more time. So what was hardest about the reading for you? There's different kinds of reading question types. Main ideas, vocabularies. You have these charts, schematic tables, rhetorical questions. What was hard for you?
I think it's the understanding question, like the sentence structure. Some sentences is too long, and it's kind of hiding their truly means and the main idea, and they keep talking. Like you may see there is one sentence in 5 to 6 lines.
Okay.
And they got a lot of vocabulary and terms in it. So the basics, the main thing is you need to find out the main sentences, talking about the main topic, and to figure out what he's asking about.
Okay, I think he's talking about is that summary type, question type, or it'll give you an idea or something about the reading passage. It says choose which of these answers best completes the summary. So you're focusing on main ideas, not detail information.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had other students tell me about that too, that they found that kind of a difficult question. All right, so let's go over to the lectures. So what was your experience during the listening section of the test? What was hard or easy about that? And his score on the listening was 15 points out of 30, so roughly 50% on this one.
In listening part, I think the most difficult is because to me, I think it's the presenter speak. I think it's a little bit fast to me.
Okay.
And sometimes it's hard to catch up with him or she.
What was your note-taking strategy during the reading and the listening sections of the test?
I try to focus on some transition word like A, but, B. So I think mainly they were going to ask about the B part. Because but or however, things like that, is trying to emphasize the things they're going to talk about.
Okay.
So
you hear his tip? His tip is, he's saying, sometimes in either a reading or a listening passage, if you pay attention to the transition words, it can kind of help you understand what's most or least important, and it can be important for note-taking purposes. You try to get down in note form if possible, try to get down some of these important points, because during the lectures, they're going to ask you about these ideas.
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes speakers in lectures, they'll pause, they'll have a long pause, or they'll emphasize or say something a little bit louder.
Yeah.
And that tells you that's a key idea that you probably want to write down. It's hard. So you hear what he's saying? He's saying that there's probably two main problems going on here with the lectures. First of all, they speak very quickly. So it's difficult to get down in note form the most important points when they're speaking so fast.
Yes.
Number two, the other thing you're probably having difficulties in both of these sections. It's called conceptually dense material. Sometimes reading and listening passages have conceptually dense information. It means it's a lot of high-level vocabulary. It's very specific as it relates to a certain type of idea. And that type of vocabulary can be difficult for someone taking the TOEFL exam. Okay, let's go over to the speaking. So this is your best area.
Yeah.
So you got 21 points out of 30. You were more than 50% on this one. So what are your tips or strategies here? So other people might want to get 20 or 21 or maybe 24, 26 points. What do you think is important to help you get a higher score on the speaking section of the TOEFL exam?
I think for the speaking part, because I'm not a native speaker, and I think to taking the speaking part of the TOEFL exam, you need to clear your pronunciation, and the most important things I think many people confuse about is you need to talk slowly rather than speak fast, because when you talk slowly and you can organize your word and you can pronounce it, and it helps you to get rid of anxiety. Sometimes they talk fast and the word becomes hard for there to catch your word.
So
and
what
then,
he's saying here is it's kind of like with TOEFL speaking, if you're speaking so quickly that you're slurring the words, you're not clearly pronouncing the vowels and the consonant sounds or the syllables within the words, then the IBT human raters cannot understand what you're saying. You're going to get a lower score.
Yeah.
So he's saying be careful, don't do that. He's saying if you slow down a little bit, make sure that you speak clearly. At least they can understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Now, eventually, believe it or not, so if you want to move from 21 to 26, you do need to speak faster. However, not at the expense of having terrible pronunciation. Don't want to do that. So what Tony needs to do here, something that I can help him with, is he needs to get a better concept. It's called thought groups and blending. So when you're speaking about a TOEFL reading or listening passage, or you're answering an independent speaking topic, you want to pause after maybe 4 or 5 stressed syllables. Then you have another 4 or 5 stressed words with another pause. But you have to be careful. You're not saying studying alone is better than studying in groups. I have 2 reasons to support my position. That's probably too slow.
Yeah, no, that was too slow.
You know, so he's saying that you want to make sure you're speaking clearly, and eventually you have to be able to get approximately, I don't know if you knew this, but it's around 100 to 150 words a minute. That's a fairly good speed for native speakers of American English. So you guys get this? You want to be able to speak approximately 100 to 150 words a minute, and that gives you a fairly good fluency of American English. What was hard about the speaking, for example? Was it the independent task or the integrated task? Or the integrated speaking task, we have 3, 4, 5, and 6. So integrated speaking task number 3, it's reading, listening, speaking, and the content is typically campus related. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
You have number 4, it's reading, listening, speaking, but academic. This one typically for many people is very tough.
Yeah.
And then you have an integrated speaking task 5, which is listening speaking, more campus related, easier vocabulary. And then the terrible one is number 6, which is listening speaking academic. So for you, what was more difficult, if you can remember, in your opinion?
I think for me it's those two academic part.
There were. So number 4 and number 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same thing with many people.
Yeah.
So what was difficult about those 2 tasks? What did you have difficulty with, do you think?
In the academic part 4, I think they usually have a specific word, really difficult. You need to define it, redefine. I think they have the lecturer talk about the word, and you need to redefine it. I think.
And when he says redefine it, he's saying, and this is where it becomes difficult, when you're explaining academic information, you need to try to use your own vocabulary and your own grammar, and that is not easy.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. It's very tough to do that. So what did you do? How did you do it? Did you repeat exactly what you read or what you listened to, or did you try to say it differently, or how did that work?
I think it depends on your note-taking. You need to keep taking notes about what the word is about, and they have a time gap to prepare.
And I think it's what, 20 to 30 seconds?
Yeah, so you really need to get as many notes as you can.
Okay. This is the key. Tony, I've interviewed students with various TOEFL scores. A lot of times I'll interview someone who has a score over 100, right? And most students who score over 100, I've done 12 interviews in this case, every single one of these students told me note-taking. They said you need to be good at taking notes, not just on the speaking and writing sections, all sections of the test. But with speaking and writing, for example, speaking, integrated speaking, you have that speaking task number 4 and 5. What a lot of students will do is they kind of take a sheet of paper like this. They draw a line down the middle, and on one side they'll put R for reading, on the other they'll put L for listening, and you need to state what the main point of the reading passage is. Usually it's some kind of concept.
Yeah.
It defines a term of some sort.
Yeah.
So you have to know what the concept is and what the definition is, and then usually the lecture, it gives some type of an example to illustrate the idea. We're in the dark again, of course. Hold on. So I think that's something that you guys should be thinking about, is how do you plan and organizing your notes during the integrated speaking and integrated writing sections of the test. Because without the notes, it becomes very difficult to do any type of organizing, especially because you have that gap of maybe 20 or 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. Is all the time you have to prepare your response before this and begin speaking. If you don't have the notes already written down, there's not much you can do. Yeah. You're in kind of big trouble. So you need to be able to rely on your notes in order to answer these integrated speaking and integrated writing tasks. All right, so let's keep going. So what we've learned here is Tony is telling you with a score of 67, he said that he had more difficulty on the integrated speaking, especially the academic speaking task, number 4 and number 6. So that means that you guys watching the video, you probably need to double or triple prepare yourselves for those 2 tasks, and those can be very difficult. Did you know, Tony? A lot of people tell me the speaking, even though you did the best on that, a lot of people tell me that's really one of the most difficult parts of the test. Especially those people that want to get like 26 or higher. They score high on the reading, listening, and the writing, but they can't get the high score in the speaking. Usually, because of delivery, pronunciation, he's already told you about this. You have to be careful that you're clearly pronouncing the words that you say. Okay, let's go to writing. Let's take a look at this one. So tell us about the writing section. So you scored 17 points out of 30 on this. We have the independent and the integrated writing tasks. In your opinion, what was the worst for you? What did you feel you had more trouble with, or were they both hard?
I think for me it's the integrating text. It's because it's hard to when I finish my TOEFL text, then one of my teachers said you cannot write more in the reading passage than the listening lecture. So things is
keep it balanced. For example,
I think you need to more talking about the listening part than the reading passage.
Okay.
It's because reading passage is given to you.
Yes.
You can kind of writing and read and rephrase the sentences.
Now here's a tip. Here's your tip. A YouTube here. Because you see the reading passage before the writing task begins and after you hear the lecture, don't be tempted to copy exact sentences from the reading passage.
Yes.
This is a bad idea. You have to be able to paraphrase and summarize the information. That means using your own grammar, using your own vocabulary. You want to make sure you can re-explain this information, and that shows you have good language use. So be careful about how you re-explain the reading passage. Okay, keep going.
And after you rephrase the reading passage, you need to focus on the detail and the main idea of the listening lecture.
Okay.
In each subpoint.
Okay. It's kind of like this. This is what I tell my students. There's actually two different ways of organizing the integrated writing task.
Yeah.
The main thing is make sure the organization you choose is logical, it's understandable, and it reflects the most important points from the reading and the listening passage. My advice is very simple. Think of it like this. You should include, maybe you have a short introduction, doesn't need to be that long, you might have maybe 25 or 50 words. It kind of explains the main point of the reading and the listening passage. Do that in the first paragraph. Then when you go to the next paragraph, you talk about the first point from the reading passage. You combine that with the first point from the listening passage. And then in the next paragraph, you talk about the second point in the reading passage. You compare that to the second point in the listening passage. And then in the next paragraph, you go to reading point number 3, along with listening point number 3. If you have time, I don't think it's necessary. You could have a short introduction at the end if you need to. Did you use one? I don't think it's a major deal if you do or don't. So I think it's optional. So what I'm saying is, you're probably looking at least 4 paragraphs. So paragraph 1, again, reading point and listening, just state the main ideas very briefly. Then you have paragraph 2, 3, and 4, and that's when you're stating the reading and the listening main points that you have read and that you've listened to. So how many words did you write? I mean, not that you, can you remember more or less? 100, 150, 200, maybe 300? Do you remember integrated writing?
I think I maybe just hit the requirement. Just the requirements is how many words?
I think it's around 150. I think that's
and I maybe just hit the requirement, or maybe above a couple of.
So he wrote maybe close between 150 and 200 words. Now I'm going to advise you, when you take it again, I would go for 250. Try to go a little more than what the requirement is. Show them that you have too much to say, but it's hard because it's only 20 minutes. Yeah. There's not a lot you can do in that short amount of time, but if you practice, you can get a little bit better at expressing your ideas. Okay, well, let's keep on. So in the conclusion of the video, what are your future goals, Tony, with the TOEFL test? Are you done with your TOEFL journey? Or do you want to keep going a little bit more?
Yeah. My future goal, I think, is above 90.
Okay.
90. Yeah.
So 90 points out of 120.
Yeah.
So you're looking at maybe, what is that, 23 points?
Mm-hmm. 23 points.
Okay. So here's the next thing. Remember what Tony said in the beginning of the video, that he followed a 6-month plan before he took the TOEFL for the first time. Now the next question is, some of you guys might be watching this, you might even want to know yourself, how long does it take to go from 67 to 90, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people want to know that. I can tell you with some accuracy, but remember, I'm not God. I cannot predict everything. There's no way I can know all of this. But roughly, it's about 5 to 10 points per month. If you follow, right, a TOEFL personalized study path, if he follows that study path, he can probably get about 5 to 10 points for each month that he's preparing, if Tony is spending maybe 2 or 3 hours every day studying TOEFL. So then let's do the math on that. So we want to get 20, so 5, 10, what is that? That's probably 4 months maybe?
5 months, I think.
Yeah, approximately. So I would, if I made a guess, I would say he's probably looking at 3 to 6 months approximately in that window. Maybe approximately 3 to 6 months to improve his score from 67 to 90. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, sure, of course.
But the good thing is he's in my writing class right now, and he's done a great job. He's been turning in his writing assignments. He's doing reading passages. He's doing reading journals. He's participating with other students. All of this is helping you for your English.
Yeah.
So eventually, and just by the nature of being in an English-speaking university, he's getting a lot of advantages with his English. Okay, maybe we'll end with some final comments. So, his future goals, as Tony said, he wants to go from 67 to 90. Now, if any of you guys at YouTube, if you have some good tips for Tony, you can put the tips below the video in the comment box. If there's some good websites you've heard of, if there's some things that you think might help him, you can certainly put those comments in the comment box below YouTube. Any other final tips you'd like to give my YouTube audience about what you think would help other people get ready for the TOEFL exam?
Be confident. You need to, no matter how you prepare, you need to be confident to stretch your mind to get to don't be nervous during the test. So you need to have good attitude to the exam.
I always tell my students this one too. I'll write it up here. I have this acronym I use. It's called PACE. Positive attitude changes everything. See that? Positive attitude changes everything. So I think being confident, being motivated, these are all important points in the TOEFL journeys. And thank you, Tony, for your sharing your story. I know a lot of people out there have their stories, and Tony has just told you his. And for more information, you can go over to my website at onlinetoeflcourse.com.